Hey everyone, and welcome to 52, the podcast where we provide tips for success in dating and relationships. We have a great guest today, but before we begin, a quick disclaimer from 52 Inc. The content in this podcast is for entertainment and is not mental health, medical, or personal relationship counseling. It is not a substitute for professional expertise and judgment from a licensed healthcare or mental health professional. You should seek the advice of a qualified professional when seeking mental health or medical advice to obtain a diagnosis or any treatment regarding your mental health or well-being. The content in this podcast may not be applicable to you and your specific situation. Topics discussed in this podcast may include information that may be considered sensitive or emotionally charged to some people, and therefore listener discretion is advised. References to third-party resources are for informational purposes only, and 52 Inc. takes no responsibility for the content of those resources. This podcast is copyrighted 2025 by 52 Inc., all rights reserved. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 52, where we explore the complexities of dating and love and dive deep into the art of building genuine connections, true love, and meaningful relationships. Whether you're navigating online dating, meeting people in real life, or just trying to figure out how to bring your true self into your love life, we're here to help you make those authentic connections. I'm your host, Kelly, a tech attorney from New York, and today we're incredibly excited to have a guest who is all about bringing authenticity to the dating scene. And our guest is Sam Whitney, the author of How to Date Authentically and the Dating Game and Find Lasting Love, a powerful guide on how to date in a way that's real, authentic, in order to build a meaningful relationship. In a world where swiping left and right has become the norm, Sam is reminding us all that the best way to find love is by being your true self. Welcome to 52, Sam. How are you today?
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Happy to have you here with us today. In this episode, we'll dive into what it really means to date authentically, how to stop pretending, let go of the pressure to fit in, and embrace who we truly are when it comes to real love. We'll also talk about how to attract the right people by aligning your dating life with your values and staying grounded in who you are. So if you're tired of games, the facades, and the endless cycles of bad dates, this conversation is one you won't want to miss. And whether you're single, dating, or actually in a committed relationship, this episode is also packed with powerful insights that will certainly help you bring more authenticity into your love life. So let's get into it. Sam, are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right. So, just to start out with the basics, your book, How to Date Authentically, what inspired you to write this guide on dating? Was it something that you felt was missing in the dating scene, or did it stem from your own personal experience?
The answer to that question is yes. It is both things. Let's start with what I saw in the dating world. Then we'll talk about myself. What I saw was a funny contradiction in the dating world, which was a lot of excellent, eligible singles, every one of them struggling to find love and connection, even though they were awesome people. It would baffle me. Why are you not with someone? And yet they hated the dating process. They despised going out. They really didn't like trying to form a relationship. And I thought that was a funny disconnect. Like, you're claiming you want to find relationships, you want to find love. You don't like the process that which you have to go through to get there, and you're eligible. So something must be wrong here, because it's obviously not your capabilities, or it's obviously not how you're going about dating necessarily. There must be something deeper. And as I kind of thought about that, and as I was going through my own dating journey, I discovered that same hypocrisy within myself. I would loudly long for just relationships. I would talk about all the virtuous things I wanted. I wanted to find a long-lasting love. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids, all these things I'd tell people. But then deep down, I was actually really afraid of settling. I was really scared that I was going to pick some nobody, some normal person that was not going to be exceptional. We can go into more stories later about what that looked like, but I started to notice this hypocrisy that while I said I wanted one thing, I was actually up to something else. And I discovered as I talked to others and as I kind of plumbed the depths of my own psychology that, this disconnect was causing kind of a cognitive dissonance. It made dating really uncomfortable, really unhelpful. And what I ended up doing was I was driving away the very people I longed to connect with. And I didn't even know it. So I had this invisible roadblock, and I really was convinced at the time that it was the people I was trying to date. It was their fault. And this realization helped open my eyes to the fact that I was actually at the core of the problems that I was complaining about. So
Wow.
that's why I decided to write the book, shine a light on that and hopefully give people some needed clarity.
Beautiful. It's so important to be your authentic self. And your book really focuses on the importance of authenticity. So it's a concept that really resonates with singles, with me, especially with online dating and its swipe culture. So can you share what authentic dating really means and why it's so important?
Yeah. Dating's a funny thing because it's difficult to feel authentic in dating. We're trying to get someone else to like us. At least that's what we think dating is about. Let me go out and find an attractive, successful partner, and hopefully I can bring them into my life somehow. Metaphors about fishing and hunting are used very often in the dating lexicon. And I think it represents a misunderstanding of what dating actually is. Dating is an opportunity to go connect with another person, to find an opportunity to partner with someone in the journey we call life, right? So, but if we're thinking of dating as this quest to seduce the best possible person to join my quest, then dating is difficult and it seems like a challenge. And so I think that if we're in that space, we can't be authentic. I'm an instructional designer, which is a training and developer by trade. And there's a concept we have when we build slides and we build training content, which is people cannot read and they cannot listen to you talk at the same time. So the human brain has to do one or the other if it's in learning mode, right? It has to read or it has to listen. And so similarly, if we're in the mode of trying to impress other people, if we're in the mode of trying to get them to join us and we're really trying to, we're not dating to connect, we're dating to impress, we can't simultaneously be authentic in that process. Those things are antithetical. And so if we're going to be authentic, we have to quiet that inner voice and stop the quest to try to seduce another person and really just be open to and interested in others. When we open ourselves up and we're really interested in other people as people, our authentic self emerges. It's not something you can force into existence. You can't say, I'm going to close my eyes, click my heels and say, I'm now authentic. It's like, no, you actually can't think your way to authenticity. You have to be quiet and allow your authentic self to come forward. And in the book, we actually have a 3-step process to accomplish that. We'll go into a little bit later. But authentic dating, that's what it looks like. It looks like really, truly being interested in others, quieting that inner voice, and being in the dating realm, being in the dating game for the purpose of connecting with others. And then when that happens, you can be authentic. And it's amazing how much more attractive you become, how much better the experience gets. And then other people they love being around you when you're authentic because you give them license to be authentic too, right?
Honestly, it sounds like such a game changer, especially when we're encouraged to, present this curated version of ourselves.
Love that.
So that honestly, that sounds phenomenal. And, in your book, you explain that our goals guide and direct our behavior to achieve a mission. And when it comes to the goal of meeting your special someone, the behavior singles engage in is either dating to be right or dating to be happy. And you really differentiate between the two. So can you explain a little bit about the difference between dating to be right and dating to be happy?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. But dating to be right, and the reason why I use the word right versus happy is my mom, when I was growing up, would always say, whenever I get in arguments with my siblings, she'd say, Sam, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Do you want to win the argument at all costs or do you want to compromise? And so I chose the word right because when we date in the world of right, essentially what we're doing is we're dating to try to find someone who not only will be our partner in life, but someone who will also win us the approval of other people. We all grow up in cultures. We all grow up in families to some extent, in towns and cities and countries. We all have this culture kind of we're all sitting in. And in that culture comes these definitions of what success looks like. A successful person has this kind of job. A successful person makes this much money. A successful person has this kind of house. And a successful person has this kind of marriage, this kind of relationship, this kind of partner. And so we take that in, and we don't even really mean to. I call them crowdsourced goals. They're kind of these goals that we take on from our culture and we think, well, I'm going to go date so that I can find the right kind of person who will make me successful in the eyes of other people, right? I'm going to arrange myself in the mind of other people. And so instead of people being people, we see them as objects, as things that we can use to accomplish that goal. People become interchangeable. Well, if you're not going to work for this end, I'll go find someone else. And so what we end up living with are a few kind of symptoms or challenges. One, we're so afraid of settling. We're so afraid of
Yes.
picking someone
Yes.
who doesn't reflect well on us, right? Well, what if I marry that person? What if I'm with that person and my parents don't think they're great, or my friends don't like them, or people look at me and say, oh, I thought you were successful and awesome and you're with that person? That looks weird.
It's almost
And
like an extension of who you are. Like
correct.
that person. That's how you think.
Correct. And so the other person, I mean, imagine being that person in that relationship, feeling like you're just the extension of another instead of actually being connected.
Right.
Awful.
Right.
The other thing we struggle with is this notion that, well, if you're not right for me, there's got to be someone who's right for me around the next corner. So we end up in a never-ending search of like, well, I'm just going to hold back myself. I'm going to hold out until I find the right person. And so we hold ourselves hostage. We hold our hearts hostage, saying you're not allowed to be happy until you find the person who checks the boxes and is going to validate you. And then you can launch into a relationship. And so what happens is we find someone who checks those boxes and we get way too excited. We go way overboard and we get overwhelmed with emotion. We get overwhelmed with thoughts. We can't even communicate right. We can't be who we want to be. The other person feels completely overwhelmed by our advances. Like, oh, geez, this is way too much. We don't even know why we're doing it. It's because inside we're saying, I finally found them. I got to get them. If I don't, and then when they reject us, we're left destroyed, because not only have we not captured relationship, we've also failed culturally. Like, I didn't get the thing I was supposed to do. Like, the story is not making sense. And so that's what it means to date to be right, really. It's living with this inner story of who I think I am, how I think things should go, and trying to force that into reality. We contrast that with the dating to be happy. And very simply, dating to be happy is we're going to get rid of all that story, get rid of all that cultural milieu, and we're just going to focus on, I'm a person and other people are people, and I'm out there trying to connect. I'm out there looking for a partner who's going to join me, and I'm going to join them, and we're going to write a story together. And it's going to be different than what other people may say. And who cares if people judge me or someone says something, or if the culture doesn't agree? That doesn't matter to me, because other people are people. There's no settling, because you can't settle in this space.
I was just going to ask you, some singles think dating to be happy instead of to be right means that they're essentially settling.
Right.
And, from how you're explaining, that's not the case. So how can singles date to be happy without feeling like they're settling?
Yeah. Well, there's two things there. One is, when I'm dating to be happy, I see people differently. So the feeling of settling is less because I'm actually with other people. And I realize this is another person. This is another human being like me. So I'm not settling for them. I'm connecting with them. I'm seeing where this goes. I'm open to being surprised. Settling has this hidden meaning in it of like judgment from others.
Yeah.
It's settled. Someone's going to see me and say, you could have done better. But to do better, imagine if you were on the other end of that equation. Imagine if you felt like someone was settling for you. How horrible would you feel?
Horrible.
I mean, we don't even think about that perspective. Like, we impose this, I'm not going to settle for you on another person. That's horrible. Second thing is that what they're really saying is, when they say I'm afraid of settling, is I'm afraid of not ending up with an attractive partner. I want someone who's attractive to me, right? Someone
now, do you mean that physically, or do you mean that just all around?
All around attractive, mostly physically. When we need to be right, the physical attraction is elevated in importance, because it's the most ready sign that I have that this person is desirable. Like, even if this person's a jerk, if they're hot, other people are going to be amazingly impressed. So I don't care. And I'm willing to go through a lot of crap in the world of right for a hot partner, right? I'll go through it for them, because it's like that value of social validation is so high for me that a hot partner means everything. So we're kind of afraid of like, well, what if I don't end up with an attractive partner? It's like, well, when we move into the world of happy, what we find attractive will change. We're actually connecting with other people, which means we're okay with who we are too. And we're okay with connecting with another person. And that may be so attractive to find someone who's on the same wavelength on so many important things. But it also doesn't mean that I'm not physically attracted to you. Like, I will be, but we're going to allow attraction to move from the number one criteria. We're going to move it down into the deck a little further and let it be a card that will be part of the game, but it's not going to be the number one thing we're looking for. It's like, you can build a great relationship out of a lot of other components and attraction too. So in the
Absolutely.
book, we talk about, I think in chapter 12, we talk about, how will you actually track down someone in the world of happy? And we look at 5 different criteria along with attraction. In fact, I just put out a course and we have a whole module on how to find someone to date in the world of happy. And attraction is so important in that module too. So for those listening, don't worry. If you're going to shift to be happy, your partner will still be hot. It's all good, but you're going to be hot in a
You'll be
different way.
happy and you'll be hot. It's
Yeah,
all good.
happy and
It's
hot.
all
That maybe
good.
should have been the title of the
H
book. No, I'm
squared.
kidding. That's
All
right.
good. That's awesome. But like everyone has this list of deal breakers. Okay, they have to be hot, they have to be smart, they have to be X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And with this list of deal breakers, they immediately will rule someone out as a potential partner. So what's the difference between deal breakers when you're dating to be right versus dating to be happy?
Yeah,
How does that
that's a
change?
really great question. So when we need to be right, our deal breakers are formulated to ensure that we don't get embarrassed by other people, right? We're not going to date someone who likes Comic-Con, who goes to Comic-Con. Because I mean, if my friends found out that I was with a nerd, my gosh, like no.
Yeah,
Or
that's
I'm not going
fun.
to date someone who likes video games or who enjoys Jane Austen or someone who does this or someone whose job isn't super prestigious or someone who works here or someone who didn't go to the right university. We're looking at the superficial qualities from the nope list, I call it, the undatables. And those are different than what are really deal breakers, right? In the world of happy, real deal breakers are I can't trust you, right? You won't listen to what I say. I can't connect with you, right? We don't have any similar interests or things that are legitimate. And in terms of legitimate, what I mean is built for long lasting success. So when we transition from right to happy, we kind of tone down the volume on the superficial. It's still there. We can't get rid of it all the way. We're human beings, but we turn up the volume on what really matters for connection because we're intentional, right? We're trying to find connection with another human being for the long haul when we date to be happy,
And
right?
I love that.
Yeah.
And when it comes to dating, what would you say is the most common mistake singles make, especially in like the early stages of a relationship?
Yeah, I think the early stage mistakes are number one, prioritizing the physical or superficial components of a person. So putting your radar on and canceling out anyone possible that isn't, hitting that need to be right radar. That's number one. And then once a relationship is started, actually not communicating in a way that actually seeks for connection, but is seeking to impress or seduce another person. So for example, when you're on a date with someone or you're spending time with them, the way you talk about yourself, the way you ask questions, you're not really probing to learn, to understand, to connect. You're just probing so you find something you can talk about yourself with, right? You're just talking about yourself a lot, or you're only asking questions of that person to find out the more superficial qualities. So where do you work? That's an important question, but you're trying to figure out how much money they make, for example, to make sure that they're going to be the right kind of rich for you, or making sure that they shop in the right places or make sure they like the right movies, and only so that you can match it up against your list. I think that's number two. Number three would be not being straightforward and honest, right? Playing games with your feelings and with the feelings of others early on, because we're trying to get this other person, we're trying to trick them into being with us in the world of right.
These
So instead
games
of
happen
being
all the
straight,
time.
right, that's where the games come from. It's I'm going to
Mm.
play this game with you to try to seduce you into joining my quest for personal validation. So I got to make sure that I'm not going to say certain things. I'm not going to be honest. I'm not going to be straightforward with who I am. And I'm really, trying to avoid the rejection. But in reality, all I'm doing is setting myself up for failure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the things that really struck me in your book is your emphasis of letting go of the perfect match mindset, which is
Mhm.
what you're just explaining. And a lot of people are looking for someone who ticks off every box on their list. So how does this idealized version of a perfect partner block authenticity and dating?
Yeah. So when we've got that as our primary goal of finding the perfect person, every one of our interactions is about checking off those boxes. So we're not actually asking deep personal questions to learn more about another person. We're asking questions to see if they can be matched against that. We're also worried, particularly when we encounter someone who seems to check those boxes, we get really worried that they're going to reject us. People call this imposter syndrome. Suddenly you're with someone who's amazing and you don't feel worthy of them, but ironically, you've been looking for them. So it's like you finally get what you want, but you don't know how to keep it. And it's because you can't actually bring an authentic version of yourself forward. You can't be comfortable in your own skin because suddenly you're like, this can't be possible that someone like this would want to be around me. And we end up self-sabotaging quite a lot in that sense. And I think that's what blocks us when we either find or try to find an idealized person. That idealized person, number one, doesn't exist. And so if we're trying to interact with someone that doesn't exist, how can we bring forward who we are with that person, I think?
Absolutely. It makes complete sense. And in your book, this is one thing I mean, I loved so much of it, but this one other part was you also tackle a lot of myths about dating, like the idea that love should always feel effortless, like we see in a Hallmark movie, or, that special someone, again, should tick up all the boxes on your list. And this happened to both of your friends that you mentioned in the book, who you write about. And they both were fooled by these myths, and they didn't find love until they let go of them. And all of us are fooled by these myths at one point or another. So, what's your take on those myths? How can we let go of believing in them? And how can we differentiate between real love and the expectations we get from movies and now even social media?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the core word is responsibility. I think that to the extent that a myth or some sort of story seems to liberate you from responsibility to find love and keep it, it's probably not true. In relationships, love is a responsibility that we take on to care for and connect with another person actively. So in the story of Jacob and Kylie, both of them had to relinquish the myth and take responsibility for their future. In Jacob's case, he actually had to open himself up to online dating for the first time and say, if I'm really committed here, I'm going to take responsibility for my future. And he finds his wife on that first swipe, which is so amazing.
I love that
That's
story.
not what's going to happen to everybody. That was super lucky.
I know.
Wow. And then with Kylie had to take responsibility for the fact that she was going to have to lift with Ryan, not let Ryan do all the lifting. She wanted that Pride and Prejudice story where Mr. Darcy does all the work. And it's like, no, she's going to have to lift with him because he'd been divorced and he didn't feel worthy. So I think that's the case. Like, if you encounter a story or a myth that fills you with butterflies and joy, that's awesome. But then do a little bit of gut check and go, to what extent is this story promoting responsibility or not? Because when we need to be right, one of the things we love and we latch onto is this idea that love is not my responsibility to find. It's the other person's job to bring it into my life, right? By virtue of who they are, by virtue of how they make me feel. And feelings can be a tricky one because we look for those swooning feelings that like, oh, I'm being swept off my feet. This feels amazing.
Sparks flying.
As if chemistry were somehow effortless. But anyone who's done chemistry will tell you it's a lot of work. You actually have to combine the right chemicals. You have to get the right reactions. You have to do the math. It's a lot of work to get chemistry to actually start to function. So if love is effortless, you may want to be a little bit on red flag mode going, hold on a second. Am I tricking myself here? Am I allowing myself to be seduced by a story? Because if so, those myths will keep you from finding true love.
That's so true. And, when it comes to dating, how can a single feel less focused on outward appearances and worrying about how who you date will reflect on how others see and judge you?
Yeah. So there's kind of two components to that, I'd say. Number one is maybe make for yourself an authentic dating manifesto. Like, carve out what would you like to accomplish with the dating project. Are you looking to be married? Are you looking for a long-term relationship? Figure that out and let that be your guide. And other people's opinions do matter to some extent. Sometimes your friends can see red flags you can't. And when we're in love with someone, that's a powerful feeling that can
100%,
wash over a lot of bad things. So we want to take advice, but you also want to say, I'm not going to allow the externals of this person dictate whether or not I'm going to give them a chance right away all the time. And then the second piece is, in the book in chapter 12, again, we go through 5 different qualities. And in the course, we actually help you work out these qualities on a grid so you can figure out who are the people with the most check boxes in these more substantial qualities. It's things like admiration, work ethic, fun, trust, these different deeper components. I like to say we should try to substitute attraction for admiration, first of all. Find someone that you admire, and admire meaning you have a warm respect for them for something that they do that you really like about them. Like, maybe it's the way they interact with children. Maybe every time you see them around kids, they're just the best. And it's like, that's someone who's really probably showing you a good part of themselves. Or maybe it's someone who does a lot of charity work, or someone who works really hard at their job and is really or someone who's patient and kind when other people aren't. Whatever these qualities are, someone you admire, allow that to guide you. And then you'll find when you go to describe this person to other people, if you have these 5 qualities in check more than just attraction, when you go to talk to your mom or your friends, instead of going, oh, he or she's super hot or they're super great, it's like, no, actually, this person's really great with others. I was really
Great
drawn to them
person.
because they're a great person. And then you watch other people go, really cool. Like you found a great person. That's
So
awesome.
right.
Yeah.
That's so beyond true. And in one section of your book, you caution singles to avoid making comparisons between their special someone or
Mm.
even the relationships that they're in to that of others. And I agree with that. In fact, I always grew up, my parents told me this: comparison is a thief of joy.
Love that.
And you fully go into that because there's always that ability to go into comparison mode and to say like, oh, that person has a better partner or is in a better relationship or something. And that might not be the case. If anything, they might be thinking the same about yours. So what tips do you have to steer away from making comparisons during your dating process? And then once you're even with someone special?
Yeah. I think comparison, like you said, is the thief of joy for sure. And I think that what ends up happening in relationships is when we need to be right, remember the person we've found is a representation of who we want others to think we are. And so when we see someone who's more attractive with someone else, we're not jealous of that person's relationship with that person. We're jealous of who we think that person is, right? We think that they're better than us. And that's an important moment to realize where that problem is coming from. It's not the fact that that guy has a hot girlfriend and you don't, and you feel like, oh, well, that you're jealous of that person, that guy. For example, if it's me, and I'm going, I think he's better than me. He thinks he's better than me. The problem is I'm not seeing that guy as a person. He's a person like me. He's been out dating. He found someone who he connects with. I'm actually going to choose to be happy for other people. And also, I'm going to choose curiosity instead of judgment and assumptions. Because it's so easy to go, well, he's probably with her because she's shallow and dumb. Like, that's my defense mechanism, right? Degrade that person if I can help it. Like, well, that guy's probably just some dumb finance bro with lots of money and no character. And I paint him in a bad light to justify why I'm not with a good, well, I'm a really great person, which is why, and girls are dumb and they're shallow. And so they don't like me because good guys finish last, right? That's it. And so we have to be careful to fight that temptation to degrade others in the name of trying to feel better about ourselves, and instead choose curiosity and say, I don't even know why that guy's with that girl, but I really hope that it's for good reasons. I hope they're happy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you
Yeah,
guys.
exactly.
And then say, I'm going to move on, and don't allow other people's prosperity to steal from your own. You really need an abundance mindset that there is going to be someone for you. And if you are with someone, you see someone more attractive, remember, if you've built that relationship on those 5 factors, then you're going to be more solid and more grounded, and you're going to be less comparative. But even if you find yourself straying into comparison, you can reroute yourself to, why am I with the person I'm with? Why does that matter? Anyway.
I love that. And how could someone focus less on self superficiality? That if they themselves don't possess X, Y, and Z, it could be the right looks, the right qualities, or accomplishments, that they're not worthy of love.
Sure.
How can they get out of that mindset?
It's a great question. I think that, again, looking to the source of where does that come from? That when you're in that space of feeling unworthy, it may be because you feel that there are just so many other better people out there. Why would I deserve any love? But that speaks to how you're seeing other people again. Like, it's not necessarily that you're seeing yourself poorly. That's an outgrowth of how you're seeing the other person. So when you're out in the world, out in society, if you're looking at other people as better than you, then you're naturally going to see yourself as worse than them. Like, there's always a comparison in those things. The way we see others reveals who we are. And so if we say, yeah, actually, I'm going to choose to see people who may be more attractive than me, maybe more talented than me. Maybe that's true, but I'm not going to see them as better. I'm going to see them as people, and I'm going to be curious about them and try to fill my heart with love and compassion toward other people. Then my authentic self emerges, and then I become more confident who I am because I'm not doing that comparison game anymore. I think tracing the source of that is important. When you realize that my sense of worth is tied to how I choose to see others, I can control that choice, how I choose to see others, and I can improve my self-image not by focusing on myself again. That's the trick at the end of it. And what I'm trying to get at in the book is that self-improvement is not self-focused. Self-improvement comes as we improve the way we are with others. Anyway.
I love that. And on one part in your book that I really enjoyed is you touched on how important it is to be self-aware and clear about your own needs when dating. And you referred to the movie 500 Days of Summer, which, by the way, that's one movie one of my best friends and I think we watched it maybe like 500 times in one summer. I kid you not. We weren't binging ever even happened, but like, we were just watching it nonstop. Anyway, so in that movie, the main character is so focused on obsessing over the girl that he's dating that he doesn't even take a moment to step back and not only respect her disinterest in him ultimately, but that she's also not giving him what he needs. And so that lack of self-awareness is really shown in that movie. How do you think self-awareness impacts how we show up in a relationship, and how could we use it to avoid the common pitfalls of dating, like mismatched expectations or toxic dynamics that we saw in that movie?
That's a really good question. I love that movie too. I think it paints a great picture of what I've tried to write about in the book as well, because Summer is the objectively desirable woman. And it's even evidenced by how many people come to her ice cream stand when she's a kid and how many people, like, she gets grades and she's kind of effortlessly moving through life. She's objectively great. And Tom feels that to not be with her would be just a tragedy because of who she is and who he wants to be. Yeah, I think only when Tom gains that self-awareness that actually what makes someone the one is it's the one person who ends up choosing you, right? And that's something from Matthew Husey, if you're familiar with him, a dating coach. He's got a great book as well. The person who's the one is the person who ends up choosing you. And because Summer didn't choose him, that made her not the one, even though she was objectively great. And that's an interesting separation to realize when you can gain the self-awareness that I'm actually in this dating project to find someone who wants to choose me.
Right.
That becomes so powerful. And then when you allow yourself to fall in love with the idea that someone will choose you, that's a deeply wonderful feeling of like, and that's even going back to the comparison question. How do you fight against the comparison when you're in a relationship? Remember, that hot thing over there did not choose you. The person you're with did. And that earns them a lot of points. It should.
Absolutely.
On the scoreboard, right? To go, hey,
that's beautiful. Yes.
This person chose me.
Yeah.
Disgusting, awful me, right? Like,
no.
That's part of it true. But part of it's true, though, because I mean, if you get the self-awareness to allow the humility to set in, to go, I am a gross, often disgusting human being. When you're alone, we got awful habits. We all go to the bathroom with our mouth open. We're gross. We have quirks. We have problems with our personalities. We have all these things going on. And the miracle that someone would look at all that and go, yeah,
such a miracle.
I want to be with that. Like, what?
Right.
Okay, great. I am so grateful. And I think when you have that self-awareness, I think humility isn't self-effacing. I think humility is looking at the truth. And the truth is I'm gross. And the truth is someone chose me. And that's a miracle. And I'm so glad they did, right? I'm so glad they chose me. So I'm now going to reciprocate that choosing. I'm going to choose them back. There's a great quote from a person I respect a great deal. It says, choose your love and then love your choice. If you have that self-awareness of the fact that you're not entitled to a perfect relationship, right? But you are a person, which means you're deserving of love, and someone will choose to love you and then choose to love them back. That will solve a lot of the anxieties, because we won't see dating as a commentary on who we are. We'll see dating as an opportunity to connect with another human being. And that those two worlds are totally different, right? So.
Beautiful. And, you share a story of your friend who avoided going on dating apps because that was the one way he did not want to meet his person. Sure. And when he finally opened up to the idea and he went on a dating app, he just so happened to meet a girl. The first girl that he met, he ends up marrying, and which is a beautiful, beautiful love story. So in addressing modern dating right now, everything from dating apps to ghosting to the pressure of instant connections, do you think the digital age and dating apps have made it harder or easier to date authentically?
I don't think it's done either. I think it's simply a tool. And that might seem simplistic, but if I'm dating to be right and I'm on the dating apps, they're going to be hell, right? Because I'm literally living in a world where I'm either finding people who are out of my league or people I'm not interested in. And I'm just like totally stressed. However, if I'm dating to be happy and I'm looking for authentic connection, I mean, what an awesome opportunity to open me up to new options, new opportunities to connect. So, it can be a useful tool on my belt. And I think you can monitor your online dating use and decide, is this helping or hurting? Now, there are definitely online dating tools that are better than others, right? There
Yeah,
are
so I was just
some that
gonna
are,
ask you, yeah.
yeah,
Like how can someone be more authentic in a space that feels often really superficial and fast paced? I mean, how can we make room for authenticity?
it's a great question. You can think about monitoring how you're using the tools. Are you using the tools as a way to connect with other people? Meaning, are you taking time on profiles to actually read, to actually think, to actually critically evaluate and go, this seems like a human being who's taken time to write something, or this seems like a ChatGPT profile, or this sounds like someone superficial. And then from there, going, yeah, I'm going to swipe on this person after deep consideration. Or is it just like hot, 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 not, hot, 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 not, like that video of
Swipe,
that
swipe, swipe,
girl at
swipe,
the
swipe, swipe,
concert
swipe.
who's got her
Hmm.
phone up and the whole concert's like helping her
I
swipe.
know. Yes.
It's like, are you doing it that way or are you doing it more intentionally? And then when you get to the point of connection, are you crafting responses? Are you quickly trying to get to something where you're like, hey, I'd like to meet in person so I can get to know you?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you still hanging out in the chat, spending a lot of time just playing games, exchanging pictures? It's like, no, you can measure, are you using the tool properly or are you using it to fill a dopamine gap in your mind? And if you're doing that, then it's probably not helpful. It's not good. So I'd say measuring the amount of time you're using the tools.
No, that makes sense. And since dating apps are currently so focused on swipe and superficial traits like attractiveness, what are some green flags to look for when you're going through profiles to search for your special someone?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I think that one of the key indicators of narcissism is selfie taking. And so you can look for selfies and how often someone takes selfies. Selfies aren't bad in themselves, but if you got a person with a bunch of selfies, it's like, hold on a second. This person really likes taking pictures of their face.
So no bathroom selfies.
Yeah, try to avoid a lot of selfies. If you're taking, you see people with pictures, I think you might even want to put on your goggles of admiration. Like something about this profile that I might admire. Does this person have a hobby that I think is pretty interesting? Does this person write something that I feel is sincere and true? Is there something here that I could use as like an actual hook to start a legitimate conversation with another human being? If that's the case, swipe and reach out, see what happens. And then maybe even look at the attractiveness and look for potential. Don't look for perfection. Like, look, pictures can be doctored all day and angles can be changed all day. Lighting can be changed. So look at a person and go, do you think this person has potential to be someone I could be attracted to? Great. Do they look like there's someone I could admire? Is there something interesting here? Am I curious about this person? Like if you're swiping and you find yourself piqued in your curiosity, that might be something to reach out, someone to reach out to.
In today's dating world, ghosting has become
Yeah.
a really serious issue. I mean, everyone's talking about it. And, you write about the importance of honest communication to date authentically. So truth of the matter is that it's lacking right now, honest communication. And singles are actually scared of hurting the person that they're dating by saying that they're maybe potentially not feeling it anymore or want to stop dating. So instead of just engaging in that kind of conversation, they just dodge it completely and go silent and even disappear. So what tips do you have for a single to face that uncomfortable conversation and actually engage and be brave enough to have that honest communication and conversation?
It's a great question. I think that when you're really committed to being happy and finding a connection in dating, it's an obvious outcome of that you want to be straightforward because you'd like other people to be straightforward with you. Just think for a second, like, how great would it be if people didn't ghost you? How great would it be if people just told you what was going on? It doesn't actually hurt as much as you think it's going to hurt. The reason why it's challenging is because we're actually trying to manage the other person's feelings and perceptions of us. We're not trying to manage their pain. Because their pain is one thing, and they're going to deal with that. We all get broken up with, you all move on with your life. But if we're seeing them as a person, we can go, okay, you're capable of receiving bad news and living your life. Look at you, you're a capable professional in the world. You got this. But if we're in the need to be right, we're managing perceptions so much. So the breakup or even just the conversation of, hey, I'm not going to go out anymore with you, we're worried that they're going to think we're a bad person. We're worried they're going to talk bad about us. So we're trying to manage perceptions like, well, better to disappear than have a conversation that person could use against me later. Or better to disappear than have to step into the emotional, uncomfortable space, and that's extremely selfish. And it's not a good way to go about things. So, in the book, we talk about how to formulate the words, because sometimes that's the challenge. What do I say? Well, let's help you formulate the words. In the course, we then go deeper than that and help you actually formulate and execute on those conversations so that they're better. And then, I think it also takes a bit of a leap of faith. But when you get to a space where you say, I'm not going to manage your feelings, I'm just going to be honest. It's completely liberating. And it's not even just in dating, it's in every part of your life. At work, at school, wherever you are, family life. When you're like, I'm not going to manage your emotions, I'm going to be honest with you. Because I understand the most helpful thing for me is when I have the truth. So I'm going to give that to you. That's when you grow up and you start to date really authentically.
I love that. And you saying that sometimes people, they dodge the conversation because they're scared that someone's going to have a negative perception of them.
Sure.
It's funny because when you actually think about it, people talk more, I guess, negatively about people who have ghosted rather than people who have communicated, which is, that's why it's so funny. So, but people don't realize that. So the fact that you bring that up now, it's so true. And one thing that I really love is you've written this book on dating, Sam, and, you're also married with real life experience in navigating long-term relationships. So how has your perspective on authentic dating shifted since you got married?
Yeah. In fact, I wrote this book married. So I didn't write this book single, which is, I think, important. Being married has helped me see something important, which is what we date for and what makes a successful marriage are often not connected properly. And that's kind of the core of the book, is that if you're going to set yourself up for a successful long-term relationship, you need to set yourself up for successful dating first.
100%. People don't know that. People don't realize that. It's not you date, you get married happily ever after. It's date, you get married, the work then begins, but obviously for something beautiful. But people don't realize that because of, again, the myths that you talk about with, you see the movie, they get together, they date, married, but you don't see the day after they're married, what's going on. They just never show that. So very misleading. And you really go into that. I'm curious, before you got married, was there a moment you realized, oh my gosh, hey, I'm dating to be right. I'm not dating to be happy, and I need to change that?
Yeah. There's a couple of experiences I explained in the book. I'll share one now, which was at a certain point I was going on another first date. I was a serial dater, so I was not a committed guy. I'm just Mr. Serial first dater. Hard to commit. And I was getting ready for this date, and it took me like 2 hours to get ready. I don't know what was wrong with me that night, because that's not me. Like, it's usually 10 minutes, I'm out the door, right? Like, especially for guys that I know, they're like 2 hours, dude. But I was talking to my roommates. I was getting ready. I was changing my shirt, showering, changing my shirt again, redoing my hair. I couldn't get myself out the door. And, you give yourself kind of a last look as you walk out the door. And as I look in the mirror, this voice inside of myself says to me, who are you getting ready for? And I went, who are you getting ready for? And then the follow-up question was, are you getting ready for her, or are you getting ready for you? And I was like, oh, I'm getting ready for me. Like, I'm getting dressed up because I want to look good on this date, because I want to be the kind of person who looks good on dates, not because I have any interest in connecting with this person. And it just suddenly like crashed down on me all at once. It was like, I have no deep interest in this person. And she's a person. She's a human being. She's reserved time for me this evening. She's taken time out of her busy schedule to maybe hopefully find connection. And suddenly I had this empathy for her. Like, oh my gosh, she's going to go on this date and she has no idea that I'm the kind of guy that's not going to want to go past 1 or 2 dates. And what am I doing? And it just kind of dawned on me that I was the entire dating process and project that I was engaged in had nothing to do with the girls I was dating. And that's a huge problem. Like, how in the world can I find success and connect with people if I'm not even in this game?
Right.
How can I win the game if I'm not even trying to score any points? It's this odd thing. And so I think that was the moment where I started to realize that I really wasn't interested in dating. I was interested in impressing and validating myself. And that's what began this journey of these ideas in this book. But that's the story.
So what steps did you then take to enable yourself to start dating to be happy instead of dating to be right?
I started instituting rules for myself. So we actually don't talk about these rules in the book. I bring them into the course. So I set up a 3-date rule, which was I had to go on 3 dates. The first date could not be more than 60 minutes. It had to be under 60 minutes, because I wanted to say, I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I'm going to get to know them. And if I feel like it's a good, like it's a good connection, I'm going to ask them out again. So I kind of solve the problem of long, drawn out, expensive dates, save my budget, save their time. I'm not going to waste their time. So second date had to be 90 minutes at least. I had to spend more time with them. And this was now time for like a meal, go on a walk, go on a hike, whatever. And then if I liked them again, third date. And third date had to be something like solve a problem together. So what I was doing was purposely putting myself in positions to see these people differently so I could evaluate my own feelings better. And so try to solve a problem, go to an escape room, go rock climbing, go something where we had to like depend on each other, hatchet throwing if we're competing a little bit, right? Like bowling, whatever. But I'm going to spend at least 90 minutes or more, and I'm going to try to break the touch barrier a little bit by date 3. Maybe it's a hug, maybe a kiss on the cheek. If I really like them, maybe a little bit more, who knows? But it's like, but I'm also going to hold myself back physically. That was one of the other rules. Like, don't go down the road so fast. Because, you know, I would
slow burn.
I would rush to the chemicals and burn them out fast. And it's like, well, hold on, wait a second, get to date 3. And then the rule was I had to be honest. I had to say something, whether it was, hey, I've gone on a few dates with you. I wanted to let you know I'm not going to be asking you out again. And I'm not doing that because I'm not interested in you. I just don't feel like I'm finding the connection that I wanted. And so you deserve to be with someone who feels connected to you. And so I'm going to let you go. But it's not a commentary on who you are. You're awesome. I'm excited I got to get to know you. I'd love to be your friend, but I'm going to move on. So just so you know that when I don't call you again from the date, you're not wondering what happened. When I started doing that, girls were so grateful. They'd even be a little hurt, but they'd text me later and be like, thank you for telling me that. I moved on right away. I'm so glad. And then if I got to the end of the third date and I really liked them, I had to say it. And that was a scary rule. I had to be like, okay, listen, I'm enjoying spending time with you and I'd like to ask you out again. But if I do, you need to know where I'm at. You need to know that I have interest in continuing to see you. That isn't like, I love you, you're my soulmate. No, I'm not going to go crazy. It's just this moment of like, hey, you know where I'm at. So if you say yes to the next date, you are tacitly agreeing to continue to connect with me, you know? So that way I'm giving them the chance to be a little honest too. Because
Yes.
if they go, you know what, then I don't want to go out again. Like, awesome, I gave them a chance to say something. And if they say, sounds good, I'll see you next Friday. Then it's like, oh, boom, now we can move faster, right? Like I got it. Suddenly I could put the turbo down a little bit in the car and move faster. Now we've got this clarity. So that was one of the things I started to do was give myself rules because naturally I'm just going to be so finicky. I'm going to be so dishonest. And that really helped bring structure into things. And I used that structure on my wife and it worked. So got to that third date. I sensed she was going to friend zone me. And I told her, hey, I know you're going to friend zone me, but I'm really interested in dating you. What do you say? If I ask you out again, would you be interested in continuing to explore this? And she said, yeah, let's do it. And that like opened the door. It was amazing as well how not only did it liberate girls I was dating from the ambiguity of the process, it also made me a lot more attractive, Kelly. Like girls were like, I love that. My wife was like, no guy had been like that with me up to that point. She's like, I thought I was friend zoning you and you pulled yourself right out of that prison. No guy ever escapes the friend zone, but you did it.
That's amazing.
Yes.
I know they say the best relationships start as friends. Friendship is like the basis of foundation. So
of course they do. Yes.
I love that. What would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned about relationships, either from your own experience or through your research that you wish you'd known when you were dating?
Oh, I wish I had just known to what extent I was causing the problems that were in my way. I wish I had realized that because I spent so long blaming like the girls I was dating and blaming women generally. I really had this deep resentment for women. I didn't even realize it because I would look at guys who were stronger, better looking, and more accomplished with more attractive women. And I would go like, you don't even know what you're missing with. I was this nice guy. I was always trying to be kind. I was always accommodating. I had no boundaries. And I would just resent women. And I didn't realize that not seeing women as people was blocking me from connecting with them. I thought it was their fault. I had no idea it was me. I had no idea. I thought it was girls were shallow. Girls say one thing and they do another. You know, they say they want a nice, honest dude, but really they're just after the biker guy who's going to treat them wrong. I had all sorts of simplistic notions about women, and it was so dumb. But when I was able to get free of that by like really starting to see them as people, not only did my own heart open up, I was able to connect with women finally. And like, then it started to work. And I'm like, oh, this could have been so much easier. And that lesson carried forward into marriage is so important to see my wife as a woman, as a person, to validate her feelings and her desires and goals is such a helpful thing for our relationship, right?
And Sam, how do you continue to nurture authenticity in your own relationship over all this time? I mean, what do you think are the key elements to allow two people to stay authentic in a committed partnership, especially when life and its challenges get in the way?
Number one, maintaining that humility always. Always remember that they chose you and that means a ton. That means something. So let that mean something. Number two, just let curiosity become your guiding star in everything you do. Like your spouse gets mad at you, don't get mad, get curious, right? Like, whoa, hold on a second. Why are you feeling this way? That's not you. This feels weird. What's going on? Talk to me. You don't want to talk to me? Great. Can we schedule time to talk? Whatever. Like, let curiosity guide you, because in the moment of listening to another person, like I said before, you cannot listen and cannot talk at the same time. So if you're listening, you allow your authentic self to come forward. It also invites them into an authentic space. You'll see just so many less fights, so much less yelling if you're just curious. And then that kind of keeps you in that space, I think, longer term. But no one's perfect and you will fall out of it. But you can remember, right? You can remember to listen and to try to see them.
That's awesome. And your book emphasizes the importance of dating authentically, and now you've created this course to help people put it into practice. It offers a more in-depth, hands-on experience. So what can singles expect from the course that goes beyond what they've learned in the book?
Well, we do kind of an overview of the book. So if you haven't read the book, you can jump in the course right away. And the course comes with a free PDF copy of the book. You can read it in the course. So don't worry if you're listening, you're like, I didn't read the book. You can do it all at once. If you've read the book, we're going to go into new territory as well. So, for example, we talk about stories. The idea that when we need to be right, dating becomes a casting call where we've got a story pre-written and we bring people in to try out to be our love interest. Well, in the course, we're going to help you map that story. Like, what is your story? What does that look like? What stories do you resonate with in media, in books and movies? And then how does that relate to the expectations of your family and your culture? And what kind of things are you seeing? What superficial stuff is bubbling up there? We're also going to look at your need and nopes list in the world of right versus happy, help you clarify that. We're going to give you a chance to find someone to date by using those 5-6 criteria with attraction as well. And, invite you to do that. We're going to teach you the 3-date system, how to ask someone out properly, how to do the 3 dates. And then we're going to end up with, improving your dating state of mind by helping you build an authentic mantra that you can say to yourself before a date, things you should do while you're on the date, and then after the reflection period. So we're going to teach you how to reflect properly on your dates so you can learn from them. And those are some of the lessons. We've got 11 of them, all with video and with different activities you can do. But that's kind of what to expect. That's what I hope to bring forward.
That's awesome. I love that. As someone who's happily married now with 5 children, awesome.
Great.
What do you think is one of the most overlooked aspects of maintaining a successful long-term relationship? Is there something that people often forget to nurture once they've been together for a while?
Yeah. I think the normal answer is romance. You forget to nurture romance, and overtly so. You forget to be overtly romantic with one another. But I think that one of the main things you forget is that your partner exists on their own, not just with you. It's so easy to see them as part of your life. And so they end up coming to form a function in your life. Like my wife does certain things, and that's what she does, right? That's who she is. In reality, my wife is a complex, interesting, amazing, accomplished person who wants to do things in the world beyond the box that I put her in. And she does the same to me. She puts me in the husband box, and I've got certain things I've got to do. And so nurturing the fact that your spouse is an individual person, that they aren't just part of your marriage, they aren't just part of your relationship. They thrive on their own. So asking them questions like, what kind of stuff would you want to be doing right now if you weren't a mom? And she'd say, oh, I'd be doing this and this, and then try to make that stuff happen for her, right? Or if you're a girl looking at a guy or vice versa, whatever, asking your husband, what kind of stuff do you want to do that you're not able to do right now, and try to make that happen? Or what hobbies, and encouraging people to engage in their hobbies, nurturing the personhood of the person you're with, encouraging them to be the best version of themselves.
And
encouraging them
authentic.
let them be authentic. Encourage them to read the books they want to read, to go to the plays they want to go to watch the films they want to watch, to go hang out with the friends they want to hang out with. Like, let them thrive on their own. And the cool part about doing that is that it'll kick on your admiration piece and you'll admire them more.
I love that. For our listeners who are already in committed relationships, do you have any advice on how they can keep the spark alive or perhaps reframe challenges that they might be facing?
Yeah, I'd say keeping the spark alive. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but curiosity. But what I would say is set apart time to listen to each other. So maybe once a week, maybe it's a date. I don't know what it is, but set apart time to listen, each of you taking turns to really get curious about the other.
It's beautiful. And for our listeners who are single, you offer a lot of actionable advice in your book and now in your course. Can you share 3 tips or steps that you think have the biggest impact for singles looking to improve their dating life?
Yeah. Tip 1, form a strategy. What do you want? And authentically, what do you want from your dating journey? And then stick to it. Don't let yourself get deviated. Number 2, don't see rejection as a tragedy. See it as a filter. Rejection's a filter. Anytime someone ghosts you or doesn't like you, that's good. Let someone go, right? 3, redefine what a successful partnership looks like for you. Remember, the person that is the one who chooses you, like Matthew Husey said. I love that piece. Let yourself be open to co-creating a story with another person.
That's beautiful. That's great. And to wrap up, singles always hear from their married friends when, they ask them, how did you know that your husband or your wife was the one? They always respond, trust me, when you know, you know. And I even hear this from my married friends when I ask them, how did you know that your husband was the one for you? And they go, Kel, trust me, when you know, you know. So Sam, how do you know when you found the one? Is it true that when you know, you know?
I don't know. Some people say that. I didn't know when I know. All I knew was I had a moment in my relationship when I really saw my wife, Liz. And I realized that she was an awesome person, independent of the role that I had written for her. And I knew to some extent that she was someone I wanted to spend more time with and I didn't want to stop spending time with. So to some extent, I knew that much. And I lived on that kind of faith that I know I want to keep spending time with you and I'm going to keep doing it. And then off we go. But I don't think there's a magical moment. I think we look back and we can see it clearly. Kierkegaard said that life is lived forward, understood backward. So your married friends have the benefit of hindsight. Unfair, but you will know
them. Don't get me wrong. I love them.
They're
I'm
wonderful
just
people,
curious.
of course.
Is it true?
Yeah, but it's just, you will know that it's right when you feel like you really see this person and you're okay with building a story together and you want to build a future together. That's when you kind of know.
I love that. Sam, really, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today with us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kelly. Yeah.
Really, honestly, your insights on authentic dating are so valuable and will undoubtedly help people, including myself, build more genuine, lasting connections. And, before we wrap up, I'm sure our listeners will want to know, where can our listeners find your book, How to Date Authentically, and your newly released course?
Great. It's all going to be on Instagram. So go to Instagram, click on how to date authentically. We'll have a link for you. And you can see in the bio, there's links to Amazon where you'll find the book and links to the course on Teachable.
Awesome. Definitely check that out, everyone. And for our listeners, if you have your own dating questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, submit your question in the link provided. We love hearing from you. Thank you again, Sam, for joining us today on 52. Thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could benefit from these insights. Until next time, keep learning, keep loving, and keep growing. And remember, true love starts with being true to your authentic self. Happy dating.